Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. We are presented by CLNS Media. Today on the show, we've got good friend of the program, Jared Weiss, on in a two-part episode. The first part is going to be Jared and I breaking down what we saw last night in Celtics-Rockets. The second part is going to be Trevor Lane and I from Lakers Nation chatting about the Lakers' young core and where we think these pieces are going forward and how much excitement the Lakers should have about those pieces long term. Before we get to Trevor, though, Jared, what's going on?
Everything, my man. Everything is going on.
Yeah, like as I mentioned to you earlier, I mean, I live, and I talked to Trevor about this in the second half as well, but like I live very, very close to where the Oscars are happening, and it's a busy day in Hollywood, man. It's a busy, busy day.
So is everyone there to see you?
That's what's happening. That's the way this works.
I knew that was the event that people kept referring to on TV. I just wasn't sure. Yeah,
no, absolutely. Do you have any hot movie takes that you want to give out before we start giving hot Celtics and Rockets takes?
Okay. This is the first year where because I've just been so busy with my new job, I haven't watched all the Best Picture noms, and I try to do that every year. But so my quality of take is somewhat, I'd say, cooled down by the fact that I haven't seen every single one. But I know a lot of people are really high on Three Billboards, and I watched Three Billboards, and I thought it was good, but it was a little bit of a letdown. Just that I didn't think the plot developed quite in the way that maybe it's the pacing of the movie when it kind of hit its turning point just wasn't quite. It never quite grabbed me in the way that I thought it would. It was definitely a really good movie, and it was one of the Coen Brother movies I enjoyed the most in a while. But it didn't quite like blow me away as the clear Best Picture winner. Because for me, it's kind of ironic because I couldn't have imagined like kind of like a thriller horror being the Best Picture. But Get Out was the movie that I saw this year that just left me riveted and impacted more than any other movie I saw. So I thought that was the Best Picture for me. Pretty clearly was the Best Picture for me.
Yeah, I'm with you on Get Out. I've seen now 8 of the 9 Best Picture nominees. I'll see Call Me By Your Name at some point, but I just haven't gotten around to it yet. I agreed with you on Three Billboards. If I was ranking them, I would have Three Billboards 6th out of the 8 that I've seen. It's not that it's a bad movie. I do think it's a pretty problematic movie. The way that it handled race was really funky to me. Everyone knows that it's Sam Rockwell's character that has the issues with race going into the film. I was very floored with how I didn't really feel that was ever dealt with throughout the course of the film. And then the second part was that I connected very strongly with Frances McDormand's character and with Woody Harrelson's character. I thought both of them were absolutely tremendous. There's an event that happens, though, right around the midway / 2/3 mark, and I don't want to spoil anything that happens in the movie, but it throws off, I think, the pacing of the film and throws off the relationships of the film and throws off everything that we've built toward in the film, and it's a beautiful moment, but it also then throws the film into flux for the last third of the movie, and that kind of, made me not appreciate the last third of the movie as much as other people did without getting too far into detail.
Yeah, I kind of like how they did that. It was like a fascinating little like pace breaker for the movie where it kind of flips the movie on its head. It's not this. It's not like this sweet little race to the finish kind of thing that you thought it was going to be, and that's what I really enjoy about the way the Coen Brothers
this
kind
is
of make their
Martin
films.
McDonagh movie. This is not even a Coen Brothers movie.
Okay,
he does similar things though. It's an apt point, I think.
So one, just throw out everything I ever said about anything, I guess, at this point.
No. You can just throw out the Coen Brothers and substitute Martin McDonagh because honestly, like the points were right. It's just, and Martin McDonagh does similar things in many ways, but it's just worth pointing out that it's Martin McDonagh and not the Coen Brothers.
So, as I was saying about this clearly Coen Brothers directed film, I don't know. I mean, this is a story for another time. But the point being is that I felt that there were the scenes where Rockwell's kind of racism kind of like exploded, and I felt that part wasn't dealt. I guess they kind of did address it with the new character being introduced to a degree, but it didn't seem that they introduced it or kind of dealt with it sufficiently enough. But then again, you could also just say that's the way that the town works, that maybe that is just how it's dealt with, or that it's not really dealt with. So
yeah.
I'm sure all of our listeners who have not seen the movie yet clearly are enjoying this part of the conversation. So
for sure,
I'll just throw it back to you at this point.
No, let's move on to basketball. I agree with you though. Get Out, I think is by far the movie that affected me most this year. I thought it was the most brilliantly written movie of the year, and I'm someone who tends to defer a lot more to script than technical aspects of a film. So I totally fell in love with Get Out. I thought it was an amazing film. Let's move on though. Let's talk about the Celtics and Rockets game last night. For people who don't know, Jared is the writer of the CelticsWire over at USA Today. We'll talk about both the Celtics and the Rockets here though, because Jared is very, very good at being able to cover the NBA nationally. The Celtics lose to the Rockets 123-120 last night. Well, let's start as broad as we can. What were your overall impressions of what you saw from both teams last night?
Well, one, Eric Gordon's good, and
very good.
I think a clear distinction of what makes Houston so great is that obviously Harden and Paul just having the dichotomy to switch between those two is great. But I mean, Gordon is obviously a legitimate star at this point, and having him as that third element of a game breaker, I think shows the difference between a team like Houston and Boston. You could both argue they both have two all-stars on their team. But I think Houston has that Eric Gordon factor that's at a level that Boston doesn't quite have. And, Jalen and Jason will come through from time to time and put out these huge performances. But, I mean, Gordon is an unstoppable force who was the best player on the floor pretty much in this game. And it was really amazing to see, as someone who doesn't cover the Rockets or the Warriors, so you don't get to see those guys on a everyday basis. But to see those two teams who not only have like their elite stars, but then also have another guy that takes over games, and he's the one that is an issue, so that when your game plan works, and I thought their game plan worked pretty well against Harden and Paul, but Gordon was able to overcome that.
Well, it's just so hard because under many circumstances at the end of the game, you would want to have your best defender on Eric Gordon when he gets that hot, right? But when you're playing the Rockets, you essentially have to have your third best perimeter defender on Eric Gordon if he's closing, because Chris Paul and James Harden are closing. And that creates so many difficult matchups for opposing teams, especially when Trevor Ariza is hitting shots the way that he was hitting shots last night. I know he ends up going 4 of 13 from 3, but he was awesome last night. He dropped 21 points. He was very switchable defensively. He was very, very, very useful for them. And same with PJ Tucker. I mean, these guys are just ridiculous in terms of the way that they play modern, spacing conscious, spacing oriented offense. I mean, they're for real, man. They're a very, very good basketball team. And that's before you even get to James Harden and Chris Paul.
Yeah, the funny thing is, so the Celtics most of the time are switching on and off of the guys on the perimeter like Gordon, and the shots that Gordon was hitting at the end of the game were like perfectly contested. I mean, he had guys right in his eye, especially the way they were defending Gordon. It would be a different defender each time. It was like Tatum, Marcus Morris, Marcus Smart, different guys trying to close out at him at all times. And he was in one of those modes where he was just shooting blankly without any regard for who was in front of him. And I think Trevor Ariza was in that mode as well. But Houston has the talent to have those guys shooting like that, where it doesn't matter who's closing out on them. They just, as long as they can see the rim, they're launching without any regard for who's in front of them. And that's something that pretty much nobody else in the league besides Golden State has, and that's the real difference maker. And that's how they escape a game where, I mean, Boston was outplaying them for most of the second half there, and Boston had a 2-possession lead for almost the entire fourth quarter. And it wasn't until Trevor Ariza had that huge steal, catching the pocket pass from Marcus Smart, and then being able to go coast to coast with it. That's what really turned the game around there at the end.
I mean, I would even argue that Boston outplayed them through the first probably 40 3 minutes of the game. Would you
agree?
That's
pretty reasonable. Yeah, and then I think right around the 5-minute mark is when Ariza had his 3 or something like that kind of turned things around. And yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Yeah, and we can move to Boston's side of this equation really quickly, as soon as we finish talking about Houston. But I mean, just the way that the Rockets present problems for you offensively is insane. Just how much space James Harden gets to attack all over the floor all the time because Chris Paul is one of the best shooters in the NBA and doesn't even get credit for it. Chris Paul is surrounded by James Harden, so he gets those same driving lanes. And, Clint Capela didn't even have an awesome night last night. I thought he was good. I didn't think he was crazy good, but he comes away and he dominates the defensive glass in such a significant way, against Boston. And I think that, the way that Capela dominated the offensive or the defensive glass in that game kind of scared me a little bit in regard to the defensive rebounding issues that we've seen in the past from Boston, but that we thought have been cleaned up over the course of the year, unquestionably.
Yeah, I mean, Capela's defensive rebound percentage was 43.8, which is pretty incredible.
For one person, that's insane.
For one person, that's insane. I think that the rebounding concerns of Boston have usually been matchup based. They don't have anybody besides Greg Monroe that can compete physically and in the airspace with Capela because of his length. So, and Horford has always been mediocre with defense or just giving up rebounding. So 100%. That's one of the things that he gives away. It's maybe pretty much the only thing he gives away in this game, which is a pretty reasonable trade off for all the things that he does so well. So. That's always going to be an issue for Boston. Whenever they go up against an elite rebounder, they're going to take advantage a little bit. And Boston, usually their counter to that has been being really good in transition. And they've been solid, but not spectacular there. And they clearly need to get better at executing in transition and forcing transition. Because, the transition is usually counterbalanced by giving up offensive rebounds because if you are giving up offensive rebounds, then you're not able to grab the rebounds and get out in transition. And so the struggles on the offensive glass are an issue for them. Not getting those second chances and allowing Capela to just grab every single goddamn rebound, that's also going to hurt them because they need to chip away wherever they can because their talent level isn't as good as these teams here. I mean, this isn't a surprise. Houston is obviously a better team than Boston. Boston is one of the top teams in the league, but they're on a lower tier. But I think they've been showing now that they're healthy this week that when Boston has everybody out there, the system kind of goes back to working. And even if some guys aren't hot, they have enough guys out there that they're able to kind of plug in who's working and ride those waves. And they rode it with Morris and they rode it with Rozier. And I think Boston is showing it's not just that Boston has got up for this game and was able to play up to Houston's level, but I think it's that since the All-Star break, they've gotten Marcus Smart back and he's fully healthy now and he's starting to look a lot better. And they're just looking like the team that they were, I guess, before all the injuries started to beat them up.
So let's move on to Boston because I find them to be very interesting as I have all year. What did we think of the way that their stars played last night? And I mean Al Horford and Kyrie Irving, because I think Kyrie played well and just got a little bit snake bit at the rim. I think he was 1 for 5 on layups last night. And that's not something that's going to happen all that regularly with him. And B, even some of the ones he missed. There was that crazy rim out at the end of the game where you just cannot believe that ball did not go in the rim. That stuff's going to happen. I thought he played reasonably well. I was not a huge fan of what I saw from Al Horford last night, though.
Al Horford was not a huge fan of what he saw from Al Horford last night. He said after the game that this one was really bad for him, and he's going to have to go back and kind of reassess after rewatching the game. So to his credit, he was pretty good self-awareness. Really. They could have won this game if that Irving finger roll in transition that literally went in and out, just went down. That could have changed everything. Kyrie was beating himself up over the way that the free throws went at the end, where he accidentally made the one that he was trying to miss the first time around, and then missed rim completely on the second time he was trying to miss. But that wasn't going to make the difference in the game. Like, the likelihood of that actually making a difference is very low. So really it comes down to those plays, and then Horford's turnover, which still doesn't make sense, where he was on the ground and they were calling timeout, and then he just like passed the ball away to nobody. That's, I think, that was kind of what really killed him there. But Horford has been kind of cold shooting in the last few games coming out of the break, which is, it's been about 5 or 6 games now, so it's a pretty small sample size for you to be concerned about the trend, especially the way the year's been going. But their defensive communication was pretty good. I didn't think that was the issue. I think they managed the switching on the perimeter very well, and they did a pretty solid job of being able to keep the weak side contained. And Houston, went 19 for 49 from deep in this game, which was good, but it wasn't an exceptional game for them.
Right.
But I think with Horford, the main concern right now for him is just his shooting, because there were a couple times in the game where he could have taken a 3 and he opted out of it, and I think that's where you saw some of the consequences of his cold shooting hurting his game, because he would try to drive the lane and it kind of got ugly, and he got trapped a few times and turned it over. He had 3 turnovers, which is a lot for him, and what I think was the most on the team. So tied with Kyrie for the most on the team. So, I think that was where you really see the concern for him, is if he's affected by his jump shot not going in, which is something that's been an issue for Tatum for the last couple of months after he hit the rookie wall, that's where you have to be actually worried about Horford. Obviously, if Horford just gets that back on track, then there's probably nothing to be concerned about.
Yeah, and so much of this I think is offset by what we saw from the Celtics, ancillary pieces is probably an unfair way to characterize them given how good they've been this year. But Jason Tatum, I thought, was pretty good last night. It wasn't one of the best Tatums we saw, but it was one of it was like an average Tatum performance. You know what I mean? And his average is good enough to be on the floor against the Houston Rockets. And there are very few players around the league who can say that against. Terry Rozier was awesome last night. He was incredible last night. He is fearless. The ability to shoot has totally transformed his game, I think. His athleticism, his tenacity really shows up every single time he's on the floor. And then getting Marcus Smart back just helps them a lot defensively. He allows them to match up and down the lineup with bigger guys. And even with, players like James Harden and Chris Paul, you typically have to have a very disparate skill set to deal with those two. He's one of the few guys in the league who can deal with both of those two players, in addition to being able to move down the lineup and guard Trevor Ariza.
Yeah, I mean, they can put him on Capela if they need to, because he'll back it to Capela so that he can't catch lobs and stuff like that. So that's the one great thing about Smart. And Smart, one thing that's underrated about Smart is not only is he great in that he's versatile in his matchup ability, but he's a great quarterback of the defense. He's a defensive coordinator with Horford. He's a coordinator up top. Horford's the guy in the back, and they work together perfectly. And their defense is amazing when those two are on the floor, because of the communication, controlling switches, all that stuff is done so much better when he's out there. Nobody on the team reads the play as it's developing the way that those two guys do, and so they're really seamless when they're working together. And so having that back, it showed that their second unit didn't fall off, because they were, this was like their 9-man playoff rotation where Monroe is finally playing well, and now you're starting to see how that takes shape, where they have Smart, Morris, Rozier, and Monroe as their 9-man rotation. And suddenly their depth looks pretty great. I mean, all those guys are really good players that would start on a lot of teams in the NBA. So now you're starting to see what it looks like when they're balancing, kind of figuring out how to stagger Kyrie and Horford with different scoring pieces. And now it's starting to look good for them. And I think maybe I've kind of felt part of their issues over time, and I'll tie this back to Horford in a second, was, their second unit scoring has been really bad, and they've had these huge drop-offs. But when they're in their nine-man rotation, they're not playing a lot of the guys that were really weak links that were kind of killing the offensive consistency. And that keeps them in the games, and they're not fighting from behind as much. So I think that's going to trend better for them in the playoffs when they're running a 9-man rotation most of the time. But then going back to the Horford-Smart connection, I think the thing that I really took away from this game is that they have the capability to overcome the fact that Horford isn't like a dominant scorer, and it's something a lot of people complain about. And Horford in the playoffs, especially if he's shooting well, will become like a 20-point scorer. He plays a lot more aggressive, he's a lot more confident, and he seeks the post more. But they're showing that when Morris and Rozier and Monroe, who also had a really good game, when those guys are hot, that could really carry some of their starters having a mediocre offensive game, because Brown and Tatum were solid in this game, but they weren't really taking the initiative because guys like PJ Tucker and Trevor Ariza are out there, and those are the kinds of defenders that they just don't have enough experience going against yet to be able to handle. And we saw that made a pretty big impact on them.
Well, like the other thing is, too, with the Celtics is that, we talk about a star-driven league all the time, and I do think to win an NBA title, you do need, like, just flat-out NBA stars, right? But whenever you're talking about the regular season, whenever you're talking about the first couple rounds of the playoffs even, I think, just being able to minimize your weaknesses on the floor, being able to minimize the way that teams can attack you on the floor is incredibly valuable. I think you're seeing it with Toronto this year, given how deep they are, and you're seeing it with Boston this year, just given how, like you said, they really probably have, 8 or 9 starting quality players now, right?
Yeah.
I would say it's probably in that range. I mean, Kyrie, Horford, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Rozier, Smart. Who am I missing? Marcus Morris is probably pretty close.
Yeah, Monroe is, could start on something. I mean, those guys aren't starting on playoff teams necessarily, but they're starting on lottery teams for the most part.
Yeah, and Aaron Baines has been good this year. He's probably not a starting quality player, but he's been a pretty good player. Same with Daniel Tice. He's been a very useful player, at least this year. So you mix all of those guys together, and it's really hard to find, an exploitative matchup every time that you play Boston. And that makes it very, very difficult to beat them. They're going to be a tough out every single night. They might not be able to beat you themselves as consistently as a team with, say, LeBron James is sometimes, whenever LeBron just goes into God mode, but they're not going to beat themselves in the way that Cleveland has beat itself this year. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, that comes down to the coaching, obviously, and there's a reason why Stevens is one of the elite coaches in the league, is that these guys very rarely have, massive turnover games where they're falling apart, or their offense, they can't execute on offense, they can't communicate on defense. I mean, I think they're getting to the point of the season where they finally have their rotation settled, or are getting close to having it settled. And the ironic thing is that in the first half of the year, it was all these young guys that were emerging and surprising everybody, making a difference. And then you get to these games at the end of the year, and it's just the veterans. It's Tice was apparently available to play, but just didn't play. But Daniel Tice has been really good the past few weeks. And he's not playing in this game. Shemi Ojale, who was showing flashes of being a great 5-position defender earlier in the year, not playing. Shane Larkin, whose health is still kind of up in the air, not playing. But so he's going to go to his veterans, and you're going to see this team look a lot different in the playoffs than they did in the regular season. And that's what's happened a lot of the time. And especially one of the things that really changed was, in the playoffs, there's a lot more isolation ball because it's so much harder to execute your sets. And last year, you started to see them go to Horford in the post more and run more post actions. They've integrated that a lot more into their regular offense this year, taking advantage of guys like Morris and Horford, their ability to work out of the post, Jaylen, who's good in the post, and then now we're seeing Monroe, and they're kind of revamping a lot of the stuff they do with their second unit to try to run off of Monroe, working off of the high block, and they pulled off a few very nifty sets with that. In this game, I think mostly in the first half, and their bench scored 67 points this game, which was a season high. And I think Stevens tends to find nice little wrinkles in new base packages, if you can even call that a thing in basketball, to throw out there during the playoffs. And so Boston in the first round tends to be a very unique team compared to where they were before, but you start to see kind of hints of it late in the season. I think we saw a few of those hints last night.
Yeah, no, I'll be really interested to see just how exactly their playoff rotation does end up shaking out. I think I agree with you that they're going to play more of their tried and true veterans, so to speak, like guys who've been there before. But like Shimi Ojeleye can be a very useful piece. Daniel Tice has been a very useful piece throughout the year. And I'll be interested to see if they decide to, when they decide to cut the rotation, because I'm sure that they will, as every team does in the playoffs, where they decide to cut that and what players get the right games depending on what matchups. You know what I mean?
And so I think it'll be the rotation that we saw last night for the most part. And then usually in game 3, Stevens will change it up. I mean, in the first round, the last few years, he's changed it up throughout the series. And he tends to change it up throughout the series because stuff works, stuff doesn't work. When stuff doesn't work, then you try new personnel and stuff like that. I think he'll probably start with this 9-man rotation with Monroe and Morris out there. And then Tice is probably going to be used as an alternative when Morris isn't or Monroe isn't working. With Morris, so much depends on how he's shooting because when Morris can be either he can either be the guy that carries you over the top or the guy that kind of brings you down depending on how things are going.
Yeah,
because he takes a lot of inefficient shots. His motor could be inconsistent, but when he was on last night, he was incredible in that game. And he still had a few lousy plays, and that happens with his game. But overall, his net impact was pretty huge on the game. So,
and like when he's engaged defensively, like he was last night, like he actually decided to care last night defensively, like you can see that he can be a non-liability.
Yeah. So, and I mean, they want him for the LeBron matchup, which they're hoping to get. Obviously, who knows if they'll actually get it? But they mostly wanted him because he physically and skill wise matches up well to guard LeBron, and maybe better than Jaylen Brown, who is a great defender but has trouble dealing with really powerful, forward hybrids like LeBron.
Give me Marcus Smart on LeBron, damn it.
Well, I mean, Smart, I gotta say, I don't think I've ever seen anyone that's more entertaining guarding LeBron than Smart. I guess Iguodala is probably the only one, but yeah. It's so much fun watching Marcus Smart. Oh yeah, of course.
Lance is not good at it, but he's entertaining as shit when it comes to guarding LeBron. No, but like Smart just does all of the little things that anyone can try and do to just fuck with LeBron's head half the time, and even like the little handsy stuff just to mess with him, and it's so funny just the way that Marcus messes with him.
The hand stuff's the most fun part. It's he's just he's pinching him in the stomach and all this kind of weird shit, and it's Smart. Smart is great. Smart is such a throwback to the menacing, ridiculous, back in the day street ball players. It's everything about the way he defends is such a nuisance, and it's just so enjoyable to watch.
Yeah. Last thing I want to talk about before we get out of here, on the Celtics at least. I probably should move back to the Rockets briefly before we get out of here. Terry Rozier is awesome, and I want to call that out because I know how much you love Terry Rozier. Terry Rozier, I got a lot of shit on Twitter last week for saying that I kind of think Colin Sexton compares to Terry Rozier, and I think a lot of people thought of it as a slight, and
wow.
I didn't mean it that way. Terry Rozier is very good now. He's actually a very real basketball player who I think that if Colin Sexton ended up kind of like Terry Rozier, that would be a good thing for many teams.
I mean, we'll see where Terry ends up in a few years.
Yeah.
Because, you're comparing him to a guy who's in his second full season of playing, so it's it's kind of hard to make a comparison to what the actual peak is there. But yeah, Rozier is projecting to be probably a good starter in the NBA right now.
That's what I think. Yeah, is there a tangible difference between him and Dennis Schroeder right now?
No, I mean they're different players, but I would probably pick Rozier over Schroeder.
Yeah, it's hard to tell.
It's tough.
Yeah, Schroeder, just because he's in that really bad, he's in Atlanta, and we never really see what he can do defensively there now. There were times where he showed flashes early in his career defensively. He was always really bad off ball and would get in trouble. But you would hope that as he continued to grow and mature, that he would kind of get out of that realm. Terry has come up in a system where they've been competing every single year, and it's really helped him defensively. I think Dennis is probably a little bit more dynamic, but Terry has just become so tough, and he's so emblematic of what they want to do.
So he's becoming a pretty complete all-around player, and I think that's what's really surprising about it. So when they brought him in, he was like, most of his value was just as a transition guy, where he was just really explosive, but he also couldn't dunk the ball. So he missed a lot of, like, he would make these incredible acrobatic moves to get to the rim, and then he would throw up this really uncomfortable layup that would roll out. And he's gotten so much confidence in his skill set, and he's never had an issue of confidence in being able to try to make the play, but now his skill set is finally catching up to him. And his left, because he's just so athletic, he moves with power and pace and body control. And now he's finally able to pull off good dribble moves that allow him to actually make penetration. And the game is slowing down for him finally, because he basically redshirted his freshman year in the NBA, where he didn't play pretty much at all in the regular season, and then all of a sudden had to play playoff minutes. And he was like, oh shit, I just got to make sure I don't fuck this up and pass the ball to Isaiah Thomas. So, but the last couple of years have been going really well. He has developed pretty tremendously over the season. People say I love Terry Rozier, mostly because I reported that they weren't going to trade him last year, and then he became the untouchable Terry Rozier after that. And I mean, I do love Terry.
You also love Terry.
Yeah, like I love Terry as a guy because he's absolutely hilarious, and he has a crush on Zendaya, and it's the funniest thing in the world. But as far as like an actual basketball player, I have been talking to people that were working with him during the offseason, and this happens a lot, but they were telling me, like, watch out, this is going to be a big year. And I learned about some of the work they were doing. I'm like, all right, I'll buy into it. And then I saw the results, and I was like, holy crap, he had a good year last year, but he's completely hit on all the points that I had for him in his development plan, which obviously it was me giving him a development, but like all the things that I thought he should hit in his development plan. And he was good out the gate, struggled a little bit as defenses got used to who he is now. And now he's starting to really hit his stride. And he went 3 for 3 from deep in the game. And he has become a good penetrator. He knows how to pass. He's not really good at that yet, but he's getting there. And he's got great effort on defense. He's gotten really good at reading ball screens, knowing what to call out, knowing when to switch versus ice and those kind of things. He's starting to really get the system, and he's becoming, on some nights, like their second or third best player. And they have 3 guys coming off the bench right now that, when they're really on, they're one of the best players on the floor for the team. And that's what makes you a real playoff team, is that your bench is able to really make up for the starters. And their starters are kind of high variability guys like Tatum and Brown, who some nights are really great and some nights aren't. And they're ironically getting their kind of veteran leadership from the bench. And Rozier has been a huge part of that.
Yeah, he really has been. He's been awesome throughout this year. I mean, this is a guy that got a lot of shit for being the number 16 overall pick, and he has lived up to that and more so far, and I think that that's a credit to him. It's also a credit to Boston and really Danny Ainge, because Terry is the most Danny Ainge like draft pick I think Danny Ainge has ever Danny Ainge'd. So that should not be a surprise. But I like Danny gets a lot of shit for his drafting over the years, and I think that Terry was his guy and he knew it.
I think his drafting, like the shit he was getting for his drafting, was like pretty much up until James Young, and I mean, well, like the Marcus Smart pick was obviously the right pick. I mean, all the guys behind him haven't been nearly as good.
Maybe Julius
is the only guy, but like they're pretty much the same level of player. I would probably give the nod a little more to Marcus, but obviously who knows what Randle would be like if he was in this environment. But that was the guy. They decided between those two. They went with Smart. Everyone else besides those two up until like 6 picks later has been mediocre in their career, so that went pretty well. Olynyk, they took him over Giannis, sure, but Olynyk was good for his draft position. Is good for his draft position. He just got a big contract. I mean, he's a good basketball player. So aside from the James Young pick and then some of the picks they were making back when they were picking in the late 20s, they've been doing really well. And it's a pretty hit or miss when you're picking in the late 20s. And the RJ Hunter didn't pan out, and Yabusele, we'll see what happens, but it's obviously way early to tell on that one.
That was a bizarre pick.
They picked him because they knew they could stash him for a while. And also because he is a dancing bear, and it's good to have a nice little diversity of species on your team. But
Fair.
most of his picks that were up in like areas where you would expect to get a good pick, he's hit on them. And the guys he took at number 3 the past couple of years have been pretty good too. So yeah, he's been hitting pretty well so far.
Yeah.
And credit to Austin Ainge and Mike Zarin and Dave Lewin, and there's the guys that are doing their scouting and bringing those guys to Ainge.
Yeah, I think that Terry was a Danny guy. I don't know if he needed brought to Danny at all.
He basically is the reincarnation of Danny Ainge. It's incredible, and that's one of the reasons why they love him so much. But he's proving them right. He really is.
Jared, we're not going to get to more Rockets talk. This, as always, happens with us. We went way longer than I wanted. But Jared, tell the people where they can find your work.
You can find me on Twitter talking about the Rockets.
Go find him at CelticsWire on USA Today's network. We'll be back in a minute here with Trevor Lane. We're going to talk about the Lakers.
What up, Trevor?
All right, we're here now with Trevor Lane from over at Lakers Nation. Trevor, how's it going, man? It's an Oscar Sunday here in Hollywood, and it's a busy day, but it looks like it's going to be a pretty fun day.
Yeah, always a busy day on Oscar Sunday, but you know what? The stars are coming out in Hollywood, but are the stars coming out for the Lakers too? Because it's starting to look that way.
Yeah, I think that's probably true, and that was a hilarious segue. I live probably, what do I would say 6 blocks from where the Oscars are, like every year at what is it, the Dolby Theater, the Kodak Theater? I don't fucking know.
Yeah, I don't know.
it's whatever the theater that the Oscars is like. So it's made my life much more difficult to get around over the course of the last week because they literally shut down like the area on Hollywood Boulevard from La Brea to Highland, and whenever you could like have to get things or have to go to the grocery store, it's also like right next to where my gym is. It makes it a little bit more tricky to navigate sometimes.
Yeah, LA is not the easiest place to navigate to begin with, so you add in that and it's going to be it's a little bit of a nightmare.
Do you have any strong hot Oscars takes going into tonight?
Not really, man. At this point I don't get a chance to see as much as I would like now that I've got a kid.
Yeah.
So it's like I am just now today, my big task for today is I'm finally going to get to go see Black Panther, and I feel like I'm 3 weeks late on that.
Only 2, yeah.
Only 2, but still, it used to be that I would see everything like right when it came out, and now, man, it's just I'm not living that life anymore.
Yeah, I feel like once you have a kid, everything slows down. I'm still in that pre-kid. Live with girlfriend, very, very happy and settled down, but we also get to do whatever we want, whenever we want to do it. So it's a very good spot to be in.
Enjoy it, man. Enjoy it.
As you mentioned, the stars are going to be out on Hollywood Boulevard tonight, but the stars are coming out, I think, for the Lakers in a way that Lakers fans have to be very happy with. I think that we should probably start with Lonzo Ball just because he's the guy who gets the most attention, and in many ways, and this shouldn't come as a surprise just given how polarizing a figure he is and his father is, but he has become something of a lightning rod, I feel like, for many Lakers fans defending him, as well as many in the national media wondering about the long-term efficacy of his game. So where do you stand on Lonzo kind of coming back from injury and kind of looking the way he has over the course of, I would say, basically since December started? He's been at this level, but we can even shoot shorter if you want to do that.
Sure, and you know what I mean? You're absolutely right. Lonzo is polarizing. You mention him around non-Lakers fans, and you get moans and groans, and everybody wants to complain about LeVar and all that, and then Lakers fans tend to defend him. Some don't. Some just say, oh, he's not worth the trouble, and LeVar this and LeVar that and everything. But you can't really complain with what he's doing on the floor. I know that he was hyped to the moon coming out of the draft, and of course Magic Johnson didn't do anything to sort of put a damper on that or anything like that. He was saying that he's going to break all his records and all that. But you know what? He has performed really, really well out there since coming back from injury, which has been nice for the Lakers because his defense really was sorely missed, which was kind of surprising because most people thought he wouldn't be that great of a defender coming out of the draft. But his shots coming around too. I saw this a ton on Twitter last night. Of course, Lakers fans were out in force because they're on a 5-game winning streak. But a ton of people were talking about when does the narrative change about Lonzo being a poor shooter? Because now here he is. He knocked in 6 threes last night. And then the other night against the Magic, he shot 66, or the Heat, he shot 66% from 3. He was 3 of 3 the game before that against the Hawks. So he's on this nice shooting stretch, and it feels like people are starting to say, hey, wait, that narrative that we all subscribed to early on in the year that this kid can't shoot and his shot is broken and all this stuff, it might not actually be right. It could have just been a small sample size thing.
Yeah, you and I have talked about this in the past. I've never been worried about the shot. Like you and I, like we talked about it early in the year. We talked about it like the beginning of probably maybe even like late December. We talked about it when he was starting to come around a little bit. But like I've just never been worried about the jump shot. He's always been able to shoot. Like I get the concern about the mechanics, but whenever you have a guy who's shot in high school, he knocked down 42% of 200 attempts in college. And we're going off of a 15-game sample size in the NBA whenever he's adjusting to a different line. I'm just not super worried about that. Like, I think he's going to be able to shoot. And the numbers are coming around, as you mentioned. He's at 33.6% from 3 on the year now, up from he was at like 26 for a long time.
Was bad.
Like midway through December even. It was ugly. 41.2% from 3 over the course of the last 20 games. I want to say since the start of December, he is at 39.8. So those are all really good signs. I'm just not worried about him shooting. He's a rhythm shooter, and once he got the rhythm down from behind the NBA line, I think he's going to be able to knock down shots. Now, is he going to be some like 44% three-point shooter or even like 42% three-point shooter? Probably not. I don't think so. But I think he's going to be a weapon from behind the arc that defenses have to engage in, and that's just going to space the floor further and further for the Lakers, for his Lakers teammates, I should say.
Oh, absolutely. And right now, I would say that his three-point shooting is one of his best weapons when he's in the half court, because if you watch him, like when he gets into a pick and roll situation and a big gets switched onto him, he doesn't quite know how to attack them off the dribble just yet. And his finishing at the rim has been a little bit rough at times, even though he's got a good burst and he gets to the basket okay. His finishing hasn't been all that great. So
we'll talk about that in a second, because I have significant worries about that. But
okay.
Sorry, continue.
So that's definitely something we need to get into. But you see him settling for the step back threes. If they're going in, it's all good. So you got to hope that he continues making those and then can kind of develop the rest of his game as he progresses and as he gets a little older. I mean, let's not forget that he's barely 20 years old, right? I mean, let's give him some time to figure things out.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that step back shot. That's a significant reason why. And I mean, that's been his, go-to move. Step back shot on the left side of the floor, taking a step back to the left and just pulling up with that quick release shot that he has from that side of the floor. He's in the 75th percentile among all shooters right now in jump shots off the dribble, which is a really impressive number, and I think it's a testament to the way he's improved. Now, you'd like to see him get the catch and shoot number up from the 37th percentile, but I would bet that if you would look at that over the course of the last probably 2 months, it's much better. 2.5 months, it's probably much better. Around the basket, I am worried. He's in the 9th percentile right now, finishing at the basket. According to Synergy, 43.9% in half-court settings. He just doesn't have that burst off of 1 foot or the relative length to be able to finish through or finish over players, and he doesn't have the core strength yet to finish through contact. So those are all things that I think the core strength will get better. I think he will get marginally more explosive, but those are all things that worry me a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And he was pretty good finishing really good finishing at the basket in college, but I think a lot of that was just his athleticism was getting him to the rim, and then there wasn't a whole lot there to stop him, whereas in the NBA, you've got guys sliding over and challenging him. So I think that it's something that he's going to have to continue to work on. I'd love to see him develop a nice little mid-range floater, and I think that's something that he can add. I think that would help quite a bit. And you know what? He's athletic, and he's got the ability to do it. And I think eventually he will. But that's going to be the biggest thing he really needs to develop on offense, is the ability to finish at the basket. And you know what? That's not impossible to do. I mean, Brandon Ingram is finishing much better at the basket this season. Julius Randle is finishing much better at the basket. I'm not saying he's going to be a great finisher at the rim, but if that's something they recognize as an issue and something that he puts work in, it's something that he will get better at. And if he can get to at least being average, that's going to open up his game quite a bit.
Yeah, so I mean, he's in the 15th percentile right now on 24 runners this year. That's a shot that folks at UCLA used to tell me that he had in his arsenal, like that he could bring it out at certain points of games, and he would do it all the time in practice and just didn't have to do it at that level. So I agree with you. I think that that's a really, really important shot for his ability to finish around the rim. And, you know, another kind of aspect of this is that, you know, his numbers shooting at the basket in college were good in large part because he played off ball a lot next to Aaron Holiday. And I'm very interested to see how that marriage continues to work with someone like Isaiah Thomas, who can be a scorer for him, an on-ball scorer who can also handle some lead ball handling duties and allow him to be the intelligent player that he is, cutting off the ball and doing some of the smaller things that he does, like, you know, just head manning the ball in transition and creating great opportunities for his teammates through not having the ball in his hands or getting rid of it as quickly as he can because he sees things quicker than everyone else. I'm not worried about Lonzo at all in the grand scheme of things. I just think that there are some interesting kind of contextual things that the Lakers are trying that I'm a fan of.
Yeah, I mean, IT and Lonzo together in theory should be okay. I mean, you know, they kind of make up for each other's deficiencies with Isaiah Thomas's ability to score the basketball, especially in a one-on-one situation. That's not Lonzo's forte. Lonzo can really hit the ball ahead, and he's a good passer, and you've got all of that going on in the offensive end. And then defensively, of course, Isaiah Thomas struggles, but in theory, Lonzo can take the tougher mark when he's on the defensive end because he's got that size, because he's got the wingspan to do it, and because he's been a really good defender this season, or at least a decent defender, better than most people expected. So in theory or on paper, it looks like it's something that is at least worth trying. I think the results so far are inconclusive, but I think it's definitely worth it for the Lakers to see whether or not they've got something there, because who knows, Isaiah Thomas could end up being brought back if they whiff on Paul George and LeBron James this summer.
Yeah, I don't even know that it's like Isaiah Thomas, but it's that kind of player, you know, sure. Like getting Isaiah Thomas in as like a proof of concept of, you know, this kind of player works with Lonzo. Like maybe it is Isaiah Thomas, I don't know, but I like the idea of just bringing in someone like that to see if it works. The other, you know, kind of thing I wanted to talk about here is just the incredible, you know, a lot of, I think, national media have kind of underrated the idea that he is really just super fun to play with on the floor with his teammates, and the fact that, like, he's just very, very easy to play with on the floor. And the Lonzo effect is certainly still occurring. I think in many ways for Los Angeles, even as he kind of, you know, I don't even want to say struggles through a rookie year, but he's certainly taken his lumps throughout the course of the year. Just that ability to headman the ball, that ability to, you know, create plays for his teammates. The ball still never sticks when he's on the floor, and the best way to kind of show that is that the Lakers' assist rate with him off the floor is 55.6%. Their assist rate with him on the floor is 60.7%. That's not even, like, with Rajon Rondo and Russell Westbrook, you'll see that effect as well, where the assist rate is much higher, but those guys tend to pound the ball and then, you know, just dish it off for an assist at the right time. And I'm not saying they're vulturing assists, but it's just a different play style. With Lonzo, it's more of a free-flowing, the ball keeps moving offense, and it's a very attractive brand of offense, I think.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, the ball does not stick in his hands at all. I mean, it's as soon as he has it, he's looking for somebody to give the ball to. He's not the type of guy that likes to just pound it and then wait for the screen and then dribble around a few guys and then cut underneath and then try to find somebody to drop it off to or anything like that. It's a different style of of point guard than maybe what we're used to, what we've seen. I mean, you think all the way back to like even Steve Nash. You look at how often he had the ball in his hands in screen roll situations, and then he hangs on to it, and then makes the pass at the last second for the basket. That's not really Lonzo's game. If you're a guy that likes to get out and run, he is a guy that you want to play with. I mean, I think about the other night when the Lakers took on the Miami Heat, and Lonzo had just a phenomenal hit-ahead pass to Julius Randle, who then finds himself with one defender to beat and nobody protecting the rim. And, of course, he steps past him and scores. And that's all because Lonzo is looking up all the time, always looking to get you the ball in the right spots. And that's attractive. You know, if you're an aggressive player, if you're a player that likes to get out in transition and run, and you've got a guy that you know is going to find you in spots that are going to make you look good, well, hey, your numbers are going to go up. You're going to make more money. You're going to have more fun. Those are all good things, and so that's definitely an attractive quality for Lonzo, and is going to be an important sell for the Lakers this coming summer in free agency.
Yeah, and just a couple of quick words on the defense, just because I think that is where he's gotten a lot of publicity this year, is just because his metrics are off the charts defensively. I'm still pretty worried about him at the point of attack. Like, I still don't think he's particularly good at navigating screens, but where he makes up for it is the way that he is just so good as a team defender. He's great at getting into passing lanes. He's very, very switchable due to that size. He can guard multiple player types. He is certainly a very, very positive defender, unquestionably, but I would like to see him improve just a little bit more at the point of attack, and just if he's going to be forced to guard point guards long term, I think that is the next step for him.
Absolutely, that's definitely a valid concern, and I will say that what I've noticed him being pretty good at is when he does get beat. If a point guard gets a step on him and blows past him, his recovery is actually pretty good. So if a guy gets a step on him and he's taking a runner at the basket or something, Lonzo does a pretty good job of recovering and at least trying to bother that shot. So that's helped him out a little bit, even though he is getting beat initially. He's getting back into the play.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really great point. But yeah, his defense is good right now. No question. Like, I think I saw the term all defense get brought up yesterday, and I was man. Well, let's pump the brakes a bit. Just a little bit, but he's definitely a good defender, and that's much more than what I would have expected coming out of UCLA, just given the fact that, the high school system he played in, he was never really asked to defend. He was asked to defend a little bit at UCLA, but Aaron Holiday was a really good defender last year, and Isaac Hamilton was an experienced defender at the very least, we'll say, and that helped him and sheltered him a little bit on that end. So I'll be interested to see where it goes from here. I think he can be a very positive defender long term just due to his intellect. But let's move on to the guy that I think is probably their best prospect, and that's Brandon Ingram. Like, I just, talked about Lonzo Ball being absolutely ridiculous for 15 minutes with you, but I think Brandon Ingram's their best prospect, and I kind of felt that way coming into the year, and I still continue to feel that way. Over the last 10 games, he's at 18.9 points, 56% from the field, 52% from three, 5 rebounds, 5 assists a night, 1.2 blocks as well. He has just been absolutely ridiculous, and that's not crazy far off from what his total overall season numbers are. It's just a small jump.
Yeah, I mean, I think what really jumps off the page at you when you look at his numbers is the assists. I don't think that the most people saw that coming in. He's been the de facto point guard when Lonzo Ball was out. And I think here's the thing that people are forgetting quite a bit about Brandon Ingram. Everybody looks at him and go, oh, he's had a year of experience. He's a sophomore in the league and all that. He's 7 weeks older than Lonzo. Yeah. He could very easily be part of this rookie class this year.
Yeah. No, unquestionably. He's going to be younger than a lot of rookies this year that enter the NBA draft. He is, I want to say, barely a year older, or maybe a little bit less than a year older than Mohamed Bamba, who is a freshman right now in college. So, that's the kind of youth that you're talking about with Brandon Ingram. He's still going to grow over the course of the next few years. And, when the Lakers drafted him, people got caught up in the number 2 moniker, I think. Mm-hmm. We knew Brandon Ingram was going to be a bit of a project. I guess that, you have a long way to go from being as problematic as he tended to be at times last year on the floor, but that's not also something that was unexpected, I guess. What he has shown this year has just been unbelievable. I think I'm not. There are no real reasons to worry about Brandon Ingram. I don't think right now, even if he did have to come from such a place of negativity last year.
You know what? Last year, everybody saw the 42% from three off the top of my head. I think that's what it was in college. Mm-hmm. And so we expected him to come in and be this great shooter because everybody was comparing him to Ben Simmons and saying, well, that's the big advantage that Brandon Ingram has is his shooting ability. And then his shooting was terrible in his rookie year. I mean, he was awful. And the potential was still there, and you could see it. He's a little bit of – it takes him some time to really get some traction. You saw month by month he slowly improved. It's not like he burst onto the scene and just dominated instantly or anything like that. He's not that type of athlete. He's got the crazy wingspan and all that kind of stuff, but he's not the kind of explosive athlete that can just go out there and get things done on the floor because he's just so much more physical and athletic than everybody else. That's not really him. So it took him some time to really get his feet under him and figure out the NBA game, and we're even seeing it this season. We're seeing that month by month he's improving. He's getting better and better. The big concern on him was always his finishing at the basket, but man, he is becoming so slithery when he's getting into the paint and finding ways to finish, and then he just extends those long arms. He still gets his shot blocked every now and then, but for the most part, the way he's been attacking the basket this season has been extremely impressive, and as the season has gone on, his three-point shooting has come around. I mean, it's not sustainable, but he actually shot 52% from three in the month of February, which is insane. I mean, he's not going to do that for his career or anything like that, but he is becoming better and better and better as a shooter, better at attacking the basket. Just his all-around game has been so impressive. He's a guy that you can put into a variety of roles, and on a Lakers team that thrives on switching on defense and likes to have the ball moving and likes to have everybody involved on offense, he's just a perfect fit.
Yeah, and much like Lonzo Ball, he's at 43% from three over the course of his last 20 games. It's not like this is it's a hot streak to be sure, but it's not like this is a super duper small sample. Just how Lonzo Ball earlier in the year was not shooting over the course of a super duper small sample, but it was still small. This is a small sample for Brandon Ingram, but it's not a disregardable one, I guess is the way to put it. And I like the fact that over the course of the year, he started taking a couple more threes, it seems like, at least maybe one more three a game. He's becoming more comfortable there. And I think that the thing that I always bring up is just physical strength. You have to be so strong to be able to knock down 43% from three consistently just throughout your core and throughout your lower half, particularly whenever you have the limbs that Brandon Ingram does. It's really hard to repeat your mechanics as a jump shooter in that case. And I think as he continues to fill out his body and fill out strength-wise, that's going to continue to improve, and he's going to continue to be more consistent as a jump shooter, I would say. Maybe he's not going to be a 40% shooter over high sample, but he's still going to be, I think, a pretty successful shooter. And whenever you add in everything else he does in terms of passing and in terms of being able to drive and attack closeouts, it's going to be a very, very enticing package of skills for any team.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you look at just the things he can do on the floor and the way that he can impact a game. He's getting even better defensively. We're seeing his block shots numbers go up as he's getting more and more comfortable with his timing. We're seeing his steals numbers are improving. His long arms just create all kinds of problems. And as you said, as the three-point shooting gets better and you combine that with his newfound ability to finish at the basket, which we saw over the last probably month of last season was when he really started to take off in that area. He's got a lot to be excited about, and given how young he is, I mean, the Lakers could have something really special here. I mean, I don't want to say he's going to be a superstar or anything like that, and throw that word out there, but this guy has something. He's really found his game and really found his footing here in the NBA. So I'm excited for him going forward, and I think that fans should be too. This is a guy who is going to really, really help with their rebuild. And I don't know that he carries quite the same weight as Lonzo as far as being the kind of guy that you want to play with, but I think he should.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that, like I said, I think he's their best prospect, to be honest. And you look at his finishing at the rim is interesting this year in a lot of ways because he's at 53.9% in the half court. That's still the 43rd percentile, but it's a pretty marked improvement over where he was last year. And if you look over the course of the year, it's gotten better over the course of the year. So that's a really important number for him. He needs to be able to finish at the rim at what I would say is an above average clip at the very least. I think he's going to be able to do that. I'm not real concerned about that. He's such a good player in transition too. He can handle the ball in pick and roll, which is kind of amazing. Like he has like 300 possessions this year in pick and roll settings as a scorer / like turnover guy. That's crazy for a guy that is 6'9" with a 9-foot standing reach to be able to do that. I like the fact that they're just letting him continue to organically grow and seeing where it takes them. Like you said, like you don't want to throw the word superstar out there. I don't want to throw it out there because I think it would be an unfair place to put him, but I'm also at the point with him where I don't want to like put a capper on the ceiling either, right. You know?
Yep.
Like he has shown a lot this year, and he's shown a lot in a very short amount of time, which is really impressive. Julius Randle, I want to talk about really quickly. He's in a case where he's obviously a restricted free agent this summer. I don't know what the Lakers are going to do with him. I think a lot of it is going to depend on who they can lure. Whether or not he wants to come back, I think, is going to be a significant question because they basically spent the year telling him that he was unwanted, and then he came out and had a career season in spite of it, which is very impressive on his part, I believe. What have you liked about Julius Randle on the floor before we get into the ramifications of what he could get this summer?
Oh man, I mean, what have I not liked about what Julius Randle has been doing on the floor, especially over the last month or so since Larry Nance was traded and Randle has been getting most of the minutes here. He's been their go-to guy, right? I mean, we saw it against the San Antonio Spurs. He was the focal point of their attack, and he's just been, his finishing at the basket has been great, and that was the huge knock on him. A couple of years ago that people were saying, oh, he's got T-Rex arms, he can't finish over length, he's never going to be able to finish at the basket, and if he can't shoot from outside, then what good is he? And you're hearing all of this criticism. Well, he's fixed that. His finishing at the basket has been really good. I think he's looked good when he's been a small ball 5. He's played well as the 4 when Brook Lopez is in there to stretch the floor. His rebounding, his energy has been excellent this season. You know, he had a reputation for being a guy that would have one game where he's up and then another game where he's down and he looks sluggish. We've seen a lot more consistency from him. His free throw shooting has even improved quite a bit. He is, let's see, what is he? He is 18 for 20 on his last 20 attempts. So his free throw shooting is getting better. He's passing the ball, his defense, everything. I mean, man, this guy's game has grown across the board. I think the only thing that he's not doing well right now is stepping out and shooting the 3. But with everything else that he's doing well, it feels like nitpicking to complain too much about his 3-point shooting.
Yeah, I think people get a little bit too caught up in that. Like, there are ways to be an effective NBA 5 or even like a combo 4-5 without shooting the basketball. And I think that he's kind of showing that even in the context of the modern game, is, everyone likes to say, 88th percentile in terms of shooting around the basket, 65.3% in half court settings. That is just really, really, really good. His defense, as you mentioned, he's one of the best switch bigs in the NBA, which is very valuable. It allows them to close with him at the 5. He's also an incredible rebounder. You can't really underestimate that aspect of what he brings to the table. He is a very, very good rebounder. The defensive rebounding has actually fallen off just a small amount this year, but I think in large part it's due to kind of who he's playing with. Guys like Lonzo end up vulturing rebounds here and there. That's fine, though. He's an excellent passer for a big guy as well. Keeps the ball moving. He's also really good at attacking closeouts. He can play in the open floor or even just in the half-court setting of being able to attack a closeout, even though he can't shoot the basketball because his first step is so good as a slasher. I'm a big fan of what I've seen of him. Do I think on a true NBA contender, do I think he might be like a 6th man? Yeah, maybe. He really might be that, but he might be one of the best 6th men in the NBA if he is that. I think he's going to be a top 30 center if he's not already very quickly.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think as much as we've seen the offensive improvement, the defensive improvement this season has been so noticeable, and I think a lot of that has just been him being in ridiculously good shape. I mean, the other night against the Miami Heat, there was this play that just really stood out. I thought, man, we haven't seen this out of Julius Randle before, where he was guarding Hassan Whiteside, he was playing the 5, and Whiteside spun on him and got a step, had him sealed, and as Whiteside gathered, Randle jumped and was waiting for him on the way up and just blocked the shot. And like that kind of quickness, we've seen it a little bit, explosive off the dribble, but not in a defensive setting like that, and not as far as a shot blocker. His timing and everything was perfect on that play, and it was just the type of thing that really made you take notice of how much he's improved on that end of the floor. We see him switching out and taking point guards, taking wings when he needs to. I mean, he's been a key piece to the Lakers and their defense and their ability to switch pretty much everything. I mean, they switch like crazy. So Julius Randle has been, he's been so good. It's at the point where now I'm starting to see fans say more and more, we have to figure out a way to keep this guy, because he's now, I would consider him part of the young core. I don't think you can just let him walk away.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that they should let him walk away by any stretch of the imagination. I would be pretty surprised if they got nothing for him in the offseason, for instance. I will say that his defensive numbers at the rim aren't great still. Like, he's still allowing, I want to say like 60% at the rim, which isn't really all that much of an impediment, but he's getting at least useful there to where like before, I never really thought he could be anything of a defensive impact player at the rim. He's at least now figured out a way to like how to use his bulk and like size to just take up space in the paint, and that's a very useful thing. Also, just the way that he is very good now at timing leaps and using verticality is at least useful. He's just short-armed, and it's always going to be tough for him against bigger guys.
Sure. Yeah, and that's definitely going to be, that's always going to be a concern, but the question was always, could he at least be average? And I think if he's not there, he's getting there. And that's a big leap for him, because, if you look at last season before, he definitely struggled defensively, particularly in the paint. He struggled quite a bit, and we're seeing that improve. And so I guess that's the big thing here. I don't want to oversell him and make it sound like he's an all-world defender or anything like that at this point, but he's at least getting closer to where you don't look at him as a negative defensive presence.
Yeah, no, I don't think he's a negative defensive presence at all. I would agree with you there. And the last guy we should talk about is Kyle Kuzma. Kuzma has had an interesting year. He started out hotter than maybe any other rookie in the league, barring Donovan Mitchell, I would say, as a scorer. And now he's kind of regressed back a little bit to what I think many people anticipated from him on the higher end coming into the year. He's still averaging 15 points and 6 rebounds a night, but the shooting has taken a bit of a dip, and that's a concern.
Yeah, I mean, you have to wonder, is this the famous rookie wall that he's hitting, or what's going on here? Because the shooting has definitely taken a bit of a dip. Like you said, some of the really difficult shots that he was hitting around the basket earlier in the season, like the running bank shot that he's pretty good at, especially going to his right, these things are starting to rim out, and he's pretty much relying more and more on the three-point shot. That's become his main value to the team, is to stretch the floor and then shoot that three. And we're not quite seeing the all-around offensive game that we've seen from him towards the beginning of the season. And that could be, defenders starting to pick up on what his tendencies are a little bit, and so that's maybe created some issues and things like that. But, I mean, still, overall, you have to be impressed with where his game is at, and you can expect there to be a little bit of a roller coaster, because even though he's an older rookie, he is still a rookie, so you got to give him a little bit of leeway here, and hopefully over the final, 19 games or 20 games of the season, he'll kind of find his way back to where he was, because he has definitely regressed a bit. In the month of February, his shooting was all the way down to 38% from the field. He was only averaging 11.5 points a game. So he's got a little bit of work to do. He's certainly not riding that hot start like he was at the beginning of the season. But yeah, I still think the Lakers have really found a good player here, and that's something that it's going to come around eventually.
Yeah, the last 25 games, he's at right around 40% from the field, right around 32%, I think 31.8 from three. He's going to be a useful player for sure, and to get this guy on a rookie scale contract, I think is an unbelievable coup for the Lakers. I am worried about him being like much more than like a fifth starter or a like more of like a bench scorer, but he can always make leaps. Like, this is a guy who got in the gym with Clint Parks after he declared for the draft from Utah and really improved as a shooter, really improved as a finisher inside, really improved as a creative presence on the floor. So it wouldn't surprise me if, even though he is 22, 23 years old already, that if he got in the gym and got a lot better next summer. It's just kind of the way his career has always gone.
Oh yeah, I mean, Sam, I'm sure you can speak to this. A lot of it with these guys is not necessarily just the talent they possess, but also the work ethic and their ability to put in that work every single summer, every single offseason, and get better and better. And from what we've seen from Kuzma, from all reports, it's been that he is one heck of a worker. And so that's got to give some confidence to Lakers fans that might be a little bit worried about what we've seen from him recently, that even if he's struggling right now, he's the kind of guy that is going to put in that work each and every year. And so you're going to see him get better and better and better.
So the Lakers are sitting at 28 and 34. Let's put a little bow on this.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what do we think of this young core? Like, the discussion has centered recently around, like, who has the better young core, the Lakers or Phoenix, the Lakers or Sacramento, the Lakers or, Chicago, whatever young core you want to take. I mean, I would imagine that you're a little bit biased and would probably take the Lakers over most, if not all of those organizations. But, I guess my question for you would be why? Why do you think that you would, take this Lakers core over many others in the NBA right now?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I would have to take a really good look at it and make a determination on which young core I would take, because I mean, I'm going to be biased, but the Lakers players, they certainly have their faults, and you can say that they may not have a clear, obvious superstar level player, and so that could be maybe holding them back a little bit. But overall, I mean, this team, I think they found an identity this season. And it seems like the guys have all bought into that identity, and we're seeing that play out on the floor. And so I think that's what's got to give you the most hope, is that not only do they have young talented players, but they know where they're going. They know what they're trying to be, and they're getting better at that, being that just ridiculously fast-paced team that is pushing the ball nonstop on offense and then digging down and fighting on defense on every possession. So that's been the goal from day one. That was Magic Johnson's vision that he talked about over the summer. And so they finally have that path to follow. And so I think that's why you've got to have some optimism for this bunch, because not only is there talent there and there's skill there, but there's real vision for their future.
Yeah, and like we didn't even talk about Josh Hart, who has been a very, very good player, I think, this year as a rookie. We didn't talk about Alex Caruso, who I think is probably going to be a pretty solid backup point guard in the NBA at some point. He's probably pretty close to being at least like replacement level as a backup point guard at least. But, right now I would say that I would bet that he stays in the NBA for a little while. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, we'll see what happens with him in the summer. I would bet he probably isn't back, but like, who knows what happens there. I'm sorry, what did you say?
Oh, I said that would be my guess too for KCP.
Yeah, but like, you know what? He's still a 25-year-old like young guard. Who knows what's going to happen there? He's still at least a useful player, and they're going to have they won't have his bird rights, but I can't imagine him getting a contract for $17 million next summer. So like they can re-sign him anyway if they want to. They're going to have to get rid of his cap hold if they want to sign a free agent, but we'll see what happens there. So I'm high on this Lakers team. I like what I've seen from them throughout the course of the year, and like, would I take their young core over Phoenix? I mean, like, to be honest, probably not, just because they have Devin Booker, and it's a lot harder to find a guy who has already proven what Devin Booker has proven, even if like I'm skeptical of him a little bit in terms of like being a tried and true top 5 scorer throughout the course of his career. I am a fan of what I've seen. I like Josh Jackson a lot. He's been terrific over the course of the last 2 months. And, I think there are a couple other guys there. Dragan Bender, who's been really interesting. Not Marquise Chris, but what can you do? You can't hit everything, I guess.
Can't win them all.
Can't win them all. And who knows, like, a lot of people were like this on Julius Randle in his second year, and maybe Chris can take that next leap like Randle did, but we'll see. But no, I like the fact that I think we're having this conversation about the Lakers, given the fact that they dealt someone like D'Angelo Russell in the summer and have, I would say, had people very skeptical of what they were building, given that Brandon Ingram had a really rough rookie year and given that it seemed like Julius Randle was not long for the organization, given the fact that we're even saying that they're in the conversation with Phoenix, I think says a lot, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is a team that is giving Lakers fans hope. I mean, the way that they're playing especially right now in a 5-game win streak. But you know what? If you look at what they've done over the course of the season, they did have a 9-game losing stretch that was tough. But other than that, they have been pretty consistent as far as what they've done out there on the floor. And they're exciting. They're fun to watch. And I don't think that we've been able to say that in recent years. And so this is a team that has people starting to pay attention to them again, and you're starting to hear them pop up in the discussion more and more and more. And so this is going to be a big summer for them if they can add some more pieces. And the next thing you know, they're going to be right there. I mean, look, they already surpassed last season's win total, and we still have, 20 some odd games, maybe 19 games or so left on the schedule. So this has been a successful season for the Lakers. I don't think I'm seeing some people talk playoffs and making a push. I don't think that's happening here. That's a bit too much to ask for. But you know, the fact that there's even a discussion at all is impressive. And so I think that you got to be pleased with where they're at this moment.
Yeah, and chilling at the number 11 defense in the entire NBA, which again, as you mentioned, that's basically like in the area they've been all year. There was a time where they were in the top 5, and maybe they did regress a little bit throughout the course of that rough stretch that they had in December and January. But whatever, that's fine. It's cool. The fact that their 11th defense is really good. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, Trevor, tell the people where they can find your work. Tell the people what's going on over at Lakers Nation.
All right, so you can find me over at LakersNation.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Trevor_Lane. The Lakers Nation podcast comes out every Monday, so I'm going to be recording a new show with Hannah Kulik tonight that'll roll out on Monday. So yeah, you can find that. And then whenever there's any breaking Lakers news, I do a quick hitter pod. It's called the Lakers Nation News Feed, so that'll come out as well. And you can check out all the latest analysis of the latest going on in the Lakers world right there.
This has been the Game Theory Podcast. Please rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes. Also, you can follow us on Pocket Casts, SoundCloud, Google Play, Android, whatever podcasting app you use. I'm sure we're up there by now. We'll be back later in the week. We'll talk some NBA draft stuff as conference tournament season heats up. We'll talk a little bit more general NBA stuff. But until next time, we will talk soon. Bye.